Welcome to rSlash Am I the Butthole, where OP's aunt intentionally breaks OP's leg. Am I the butthole after I exposed my aunt after she claimed that I was faking my disability for attention? She then ended up attacking me and putting me in the hospital. I'm a 31-year-old woman, and I was born with a severe genetic disorder called EDS hypermobility type. The illness varies greatly from person to person. Most people can lead relatively normal lives with some pain and problems. EDS is basically a group of disorders caused by defective collagen in the body. This results in a host of issues, including joint hypermobility, which causes joints to be so loose and unstable that they dislocate or subluxate, which means partially dislocate constantly. Severe joint and soft tissue pain due to the constant dislocations and the resulting damage to the joints, among other things. Extreme chronic fatigue. Skin that bruises easily and, in thin areas, can even tear. Dizziness when standing up because my blood pressure drops rapidly. About 11 years ago, my disorder worsened significantly, and I was forced to start using a wheelchair to get around because walking more than 100 feet became extremely dangerous for me. The risk of falling due to a hip dislocation was high. In the last 3 years, I upgraded to an electric wheelchair because pushing a manual chair became too painful. For reasons I don't fully understand, my 54-year-old aunt has an extreme dislike for disabled people, especially those in wheelchairs who can still move their legs. For 11 years, whenever we were alone, she treated me worse than a dog and insisted that my disorder was completely fake and made up. She claimed I was lying about it because I wanted all the attention focused on me, believing that I was jealous of anyone else receiving attention, especially her. I tried to confront her about it and talk it out, but since I was already overwhelmed by my condition, I ended up keeping her comments to myself. Since I'm not confrontational and I don't see her often throughout the year, I don't want to burden anyone with it, especially as I already had to ask for so much help from the people around me. And my parents were exhausted from all the doctor's visits during that time. So for the past 11 years, I've just ignored every comment she made when we were alone because I'd grown accustomed to it. I absolutely didn't care what she thought at this point, and I knew that she was just being an idiot. That was until things really escalated last week when I went to visit my aunt for our yearly family dinner. She was the one who organized the dinner this year. All was going well until she drank more than usual and became a lot snarkier towards me in front of the family. This caused some family members to call her out and tell her it was inappropriate and uncalled for. She silently fumed, giving me death glares afterwards. My parents noticed this and kept an eye on her. Unfortunately, at some point, I went into the kitchen on the other side of the house to take a break from my aunt's stairs and take my medication in private. My aunt followed me into the kitchen and closed the door behind her. I knew this wasn't good, since she was clearly intoxicated. So I discreetly started recording the incident on my phone. Since the door was closed and we were far from the others, with many people talking loudly in the other room, no one would be able to hear us, even if I screamed. My aunt asked me if I was enjoying being an attention hog and ruining her dinner by humiliating her. I slowly tried to maneuver my wheelchair towards the door while apologizing, telling her that that wasn't my intention. At that point, I tried to say what she wanted to hear so I could get to safety. She started raising her voice, accusing me of being jealous of her success and faking my disorder out of laziness. She began calling me every name in the book, yelling nonsense at me. I started to think that she might be having a mental breakdown, and I began crying and pleading with her to let me go. Realizing I needed to get out of there, I decided I couldn't do it in my chair, so I tried to stand out of it. Unfortunately, she turned violent and pushed me back into the chair hard. She screamed that she wasn't done yet and that liars like me needed to be taught a lesson. She started hitting me in the face as hard as she could, which dislocated my jaw. Then she tried to pull me out of the chair, dislocating my arm, but I fought back, so she failed. She then somehow managed to push my chair over onto its side, causing my foot to get stuck behind the footrest. Luckily, my dad, noticing my absence and that my aunt was also gone, became concerned and began searching for me. My father later told me that I let out such a blood-curdling scream that it was audible throughout the entire dining room, prompting him and my mom to sprint towards the sound. At that point, I was starting to lose consciousness from the pain. I remember my dad bursting through the door. From what I was told, my dad body slammed my aunt, his younger sister, and punched her to make sure she stayed down. My mom screamed for someone to call 911, which my nephew did immediately. My mom then got me free from my wheelchair and tried to recall her first aid training. Meanwhile, my dad pinned my aunt to the floor while my aunt's husband stood there in complete shock, not knowing what to do. The police and ambulance arrived, and they put my aunt in cuffs. She screamed at my dad, asking how dare he lay hands on a woman, no less his sister. My uncle then tried to defend my aunt, claiming they didn't know what had happened and that I could have tipped over myself after trying to attack her. He insisted that his wife would never do something like that and that it had to have been provoked. He apparently said much worse things as well, but my parents wouldn't specify what exactly. I regained consciousness at this point, likely due to receiving some strong pain medication. It's still a blur because the medication left me disoriented. I was taken away by the ambulance while my aunt was taken to jail. At the hospital, I was found to have multiple fractured ribs, a dislocated arm, and a dislocated jaw. I also suffered a concussion from the punches, but the worst damage was to my foot, which turned out to be broken. I also have cuts and scrapes everywhere because my skin is so fragile. Fortunately, the injuries weren't severe enough to require surgery. But with my disorder, it'll take at least 10 weeks in a cast, followed by physical therapy, although my ankle will likely be permanently damaged. I feel guilty for ruining my aunt's life. I've gotten multiple voicemails from different numbers with her screaming that I ruined her life and probably their finances. My uncle is trying to save his own reputation by taking my aunt's side, but that's short-lived because he wants a divorce. My aunt and a few other family members are making me doubt if I've done something wrong here, so that's why I'm asking if I'm the butthole. Also, I ended up sharing the video footage for my family to see, which might have been wrong, but seeing the reactions, it was probably the right thing. After that, stuff really hit the fan for her, so that's why she's even more angry. Also, OP clarifies, a lot of people don't understand that when you're badly disabled, at least in my case, people will constantly tell you that you're at fault for things. That, plus past traumatic experiences, have made it really difficult for me to even stand up for myself, or know when I'm truly at fault for things. It's hard for me to discern when people are just trying to basically gaslight me into believing that I'm the cause of the issue. Well, this one's easy. OP, you get 0 out of 5 buttholes because you didn't do anything, you just went to the kitchen by yourself? And your aunt gets 4.5 out of 5 buttholes for being an ableist and breaking your bones over... hold on. Let's just suppose that the aunt was right. Let's suppose that OP is faking her illness. Does that justify breaking her ribs, breaking her foot, dislocating her jaw? That is a crazy overreaction. So even if the aunt were right, and she's not right, she would still be wrong. Am I the butthole for telling my in-laws that I'll never forgive them against my pregnant wife's wishes? I'm a 36-year-old man married to my 34-year-old wife. We have a 3-year-old son, and my wife is 6 months pregnant with a girl. I love my wife, and she's way stronger than I am because she's dealt with more in her life than I could have ever imagined. My wife was repeatedly sexually abused as a little girl by her paternal grandfather. She told me about this back in college, but hadn't told anyone else about it at that point. Shortly before we got married, when she was 27, she decided she needed to tell her parents what happened, and also file a police report because she was terrified it might happen to another child. Long story short, her parents and entire extended family accused her of lying for attention. This devastated my wife, who was close to both of her parents, but especially her father. Things got really tense between my wife and her parents, and they didn't speak for years. They didn't go to our wedding, and they hadn't even met our son until a few days ago. I personally saw how painful it was for my wife, who felt betrayed by the people who were supposed to love and protect her the most. What her grandfather did was obviously disgusting and terrible, but honestly, I think she was even more traumatized and heartbroken over her parents' reaction to the abuse. Let's just say there were lots of tear-filled nights, especially around holidays, birthdays, and other big life events. A few days ago, my mother-in-law reached out to my wife out of the blue. According to my wife, my mother-in-law was in tears, and she told my wife that 2 of her cousins, who are sisters, told their parents they were sexually abused by that same grandfather. I guess my wife's parents now believe her because they don't think all three of them would lie about this. My mother-in-law and father-in-law then got on a plane because they wanted to apologize to my wife in person. They came to our house, met our son for the first time, and had a long talk with my wife saying how sorry they were. The three of them were in tears, and I have to admit that their remorse did seem genuine. They at least seem to realize how badly they messed up, and they think they'll probably be sorry about it for the rest of their lives. After lots of apologies, my wife told my in-law that she loves them and forgives them and wants them to be part of our lives. To be honest, I want nothing to do with these people. As a father, I don't understand how you could do that to your own child. I'll let my wife have whatever relationship she wants with them, but I don't ever see myself liking or trusting them. I couldn't sit there anymore, so I got up to leave. My wife asked where I was going, and I said that I was tired, even though it was like 6 o'clock. My wife told me to stay and that she forgives her parents, and I quipped back that I don't and never would. I told my in-laws that they broke my wife's heart and that I can't imagine siding with a child molester over my own child. I also added that my wife is the most caring and trustworthy person I'd ever met, and that she had done nothing to warrant that treatment from her own family. My mother-in-law started crying even harder, and my father-in-law repeated his same apologies about how sorry he was. I removed myself and went to bed. When my wife finally came upstairs, she wasn't happy with me. She said that her parents are sorry, and she wants our kids to have their grandparents in their lives. I said that's her decision, but I'm not going to pretend to like them after how badly they hurt her. My wife asked me to imagine how I would feel if I learned that my father hurt one of our kids. I said that I'd be shocked and confused, but my first duty is to her and our children, so I would always choose the three of them. My wife kept reiterating that it was a difficult situation and asked if I could at least try to see their perspective. I told her that I'd try to for her sake, but again, I don't think that I'll ever forgive them. The in-laws have left, luckily, but I can tell my wife is still a bit upset with me. Am I the butthole for what I said and how I acted? OP, I'm on your side here, but keep in mind, you being right doesn't necessarily mean that your wife is wrong, so don't try to be antagonistic with her because she needs support and most likely professional therapy. I'm giving you and your wife 0 out of 5 buttholes. I'm giving your in-laws 4 out of 5 buttholes and the grandfather a really easy 5 out of 5 buttholes. Am I the butthole for telling my wife that I hate her Fridgescaping? Recently, my wife has taken to Fridgescaping. I guess it's a recent trend because I never heard about it before this. She started decorating our fridge and it was really getting on my nerves. For example, she puts flowers in the fridge in vases in front of food, so you have to move things just to get to the food. What? She puts all our food in fancy baskets, jars, and similar things. I know it sounds absurd, but if you just search up Fridgescaping, you'll see what I'm talking about. I didn't care at first because I don't have to use the fridge much anyways. I don't cook a lot. But she's getting too meticulous with it and is adding too much decor. It's made the fridge very uninviting for me. She gets upset when I get something from the fridge and don't put things back perfectly. She keeps taking it as a personal slight and acts like I've done something to deliberately hurt her when I haven't. I just find it unnecessary to maintain such an organized fridge. Before she started this, it would take me 30 seconds to grab something quick from the fridge, whereas now it's a whole ordeal. Last weekend, she confronted me after I grabbed some leftovers from the fridge and left it in disarray, according to her. I explained how I found the hobby stupid, and she can decorate other things, it doesn't have to be a fridge. Her decorations get in the way when I want to quickly eat. When I come home from work hungry and tired and want to grab a quick bite, it's frustrating. I also talked to my son about it, and he finds it annoying, which I told her about. She didn't argue back after that, and she removed all the decorations from the fridge, which I have to admit has been relieving. However, she's been acting very distant towards me and just hasn't been herself, and it's been weird intimacy-wise. Man, OP, I might get crap for this, but I actually think I'm on the wife's side. Because let's be real, the core problem here is that she just has a hobby that OP thinks is dumb, and that hobby happens to occupy a communal space. So yeah, the wife should be considerate that, she's infringing on other people's spaces, but at its core, it's a pretty harmless hobby. And the way OP is reacting to this is kind of unnecessarily antagonistic. So to me, this feels like everyone is a butthole situation where the wife and OP both deserve like 0.5 out of 5 buttholes, because the wife should be more mindful of the communal space, but also the husband is just kind of dumping on a harmless hobby just because it adds 5 seconds to finding the ketchup. It's not that big of a deal.
That was rSlash Am I the Butthole? And if you like this content, check out my podcast where I publish the exact same episodes. Also, hit that subscribe button because I put out new Reddit videos every single day.